Hello everybody, this is Johns Hopkins with Baltimore Heritage, and we're back with another of our 5-Minute Histories videos. And today I am squarely downtown on Light Street, and behind me is the Transamerica building. Some of you may know it by a former name, the Legg Mason building, or before that, the USF&G building, or simply 100 Light Street. And on this really gray and rainy day, up there on the 33rd floor, there are no doubt humans doing their human thing, but there are also peregrine falcons on the outside doing their peregrine falcon thing. And today we're going to try to put on our peregrine lenses and take a look at the building and the falcons that have occupied the 33rd floor since the 1970s. Almost 50 years we have been lucky enough in Baltimore to call peregrine falcons our neighbors, historic in its own right. So we're going to talk about the building and talk about the falcons, but let's start with the falcons. Peregrine falcons can be found on every continent except for Antarctica. Some of you may know that peregrine comes from the Greek word for wanderer. Some migrate from South America to Canada 15,000 miles each year. Some, like our own, don't migrate at all. And some of you may know that peregrine falcons are the fastest birds on Earth. They can reach speeds of 240 miles an hour. At least part of the reason evolutionarily for this is that their prey are ducks and pigeons that they take on the fly while they're up in the air. So imagine you're a poor unsuspecting duck flapping along. All of a sudden a 240 mile an hour dive bombing falcon comes and gets you. That's pretty much the end right there. So they're found on every continent and they're really fast, but by 1970 they were almost gone, and that was because of DDT and other pesticides that bioaccumulate in their bodies as they eat the ducks and pigeons and whatnot that have DDT in their own bodies. It accumulates in the falcons' bodies and eagles and ospreys and other birds of prey. In 1962, a Marylander, Rachel Carson, sounded the alarm on DDT, publishing her book, Silent Spring. It took us a little while to get serious, but by 1972, the United States had banned DDT, and then began hope for the falcons. In the early 1970s, another program was started, which was called the Peregrine Fund. And one of the things that they did was start breeding programs. We got our first falcon in 1977. Her name was Scarlet, and she came with what was called a scrape, a man-made nest. The birds are pretty neat in that they do not make big nests with twigs like eagles or ospreys. They just scrape a little flat surface, historically along cliffs, but could be a downtown skyscraper, so their eggs don't roll out. And Scarlet came with kind of a man-made nest for herself. She was pretty happy here, but she was not so happy with the mates that were provided to her. But in 1984, she found a wild mate named Beauregard, and they had a successful nesting season. And that became part of an enormous success story. Peregrine falcons were brought back from the brink in cities like Baltimore across the country and in wild places as well. The pair that nested here for a long time, and in fact more and more birds came to nest here, but we're going to get to that in a second. Let's turn the chapter to talk about the building itself. If you were to design a peregrine falcon building, you probably would design something that looks a lot like the Transamerica building behind me. First of all, it's tall. In fact, it's the tallest building in the city at 529 feet. The birds don't roost at the very top, but they're on the 33rd story, so pretty near the top. Second, it has flat ledges, kind of like the cliffs that peregrine falcons call home in the wild. And in fact, the way it was built was revolutionary to get us those flat ledges. The center concrete column with the elevators was built first, and then each floor they laid huge horizontal beams, steel beams, and built each floor from the ground up. As a somewhat funny aside, during construction, and they were able to do about a floor a day, so they were going really fast. One reporter said it sparked the phenomenon of what he called sidewalk superintendents. People on their lunch break downtown would walk by and give their unsolicited advice on how to build this building to the poor workers who had to do it. But as a consequence of this sort of horizontal construction, when the outside layer skin, if you will, got put on, they left flat little ledges, perfect for peregrine falcons. The architect, if you're interested, was a young Czechoslovakian named Vlastimil Kubek. I think I'm pronouncing that about right. The humans in there appreciate the English brown oak, the rich decorations that are inside. But the peregrine falcons probably don't care about that. They care about the wonderful Spanish pink granite that's on the outside. I'm going to wrap up and with the falcon story. As I said, there have been nesting pair here for almost 50 years. We first, of course, had Scarlet and Beauregard. Sadly, when Scarlet had her first successful clutch of eggs, she had been given artificially inseminated eggs for years and was kind of a surrogate mom, and that was working. But when she had her first one, later that year she died. Unfortunately, she got a throat infection and starved to death. Beauregard mourned, but not for very long. 4 days later, he found a new mate, a bird named Blythe, who was hatched in New Jersey, found her way down to the Chesapeake Bay. And I will not go through the whole lineage of who begat who, but we've had birds up there for 50 years. Today, the nesting pairs, their names are Bo, B-O-H, as in Natty Bo Beer, and Barb, as in Barbara Mikulski, the longtime Maryland senator who did so much for Baltimore and the harbor. And if you're curious, one fun thing is since 2015, the Chesapeake Conservancy has had what they call the Peregrine Falcon Cam up on the 33rd floor, and you could log on and see what the birds are doing in real time. I just logged on, and right now on this rainy day, they seem to be dancing around up there on their scrape, looking pretty happy. So check it out. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.